One of the best habits that I picked up as CEO after I raised the Series A was to actually hold strategic offsites with my leadership team. When we got together, it helped us get out of the business and actually think strategically about where we want to take the business, how do we drive growth, what do we stop, where do we start, where do we continue. It was some of the best work that we did as a team to get alignment and actually to think, how do we actually consciously drive the growth of the business? I wish I had started that practice even before my Series A, but once I did, there was no looking back. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 4 principles you absolutely need to know to run your own strategic offsite the right way, to actually go through a strategic planning process that will help you drive growth consciously for your SaaS business. Intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unstoppable. I'm TK, and on this channel, I help SaaS founders like you navigate the path to the next stage of growth with an unstoppable strategy. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon because I drop a video every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday with the TK energy. And if you're already part of our community, welcome back. It's really awesome to have you here. Now, we're gonna be talking about the strategic planning process that I like to follow for SaaS businesses. I've done this at ToutApp, I've done this at Marketo, and they're different sized SaaS businesses, but the core principles apply just the same. When you actually follow this, you'll actually be able to have a one-page strategy that you can follow to drive the growth of your SaaS business. So if you're excited to dig in, go ahead and smash that like button and let's get right into it. Now, here's the basic framework that I follow. The first thing that I always want to get in sync with my team before we dive into the details, before we start to talk about budgeting, before we start to talk about what do we cut and what do we start, you want to take a step back and just really answer the high level question of what does winning look like? So at the high level for the strategy session, you want to zoom everyone out as much as possible, and you really want to start with what does winning in this next stage look like? One of the reasons this question is one of my favorites is because it aligns everyone to actually think about what is the common goal that we're all going after. Whenever I did this in terms of my executive team, I thought that every single member of my leadership team had something really interesting to contribute. For example, my customer success leader would start to say just how much our customers are absolutely loving the product and what our retention rates are, which makes him bullish about how we can actually sell them more. My sales leader would start to chime in on, well, we're winning on this front, but we're losing on this front, and winning really looks like we need to improve on product. And our product leader would say, yeah, we've got this exciting feature coming out, which will really go against the competition in this way and unlock this new level of growth and add things to sell to existing customers. So it really gets everyone to start talking about what's possible, what we're driving towards, and really what that next stage of growth looks like. Because in the first hour of the meeting, it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be kind of like, what are we doing here? I have a bunch of emails to answer. You're gonna have to force them to not look at their laptops, look at their emails. And you really wanna get them out of their comfort zone and get them humming about, look, we're all in this together. Here's really what the next stage of growth looks like. Here's the opportunity ahead of us. And that's part of your job as the CEO to get them jazzed up about that. Once you've talked about this higher level goal, and ideally, there's some level of revenue associated with this, the next stage of revenue. If you're a millionaire, you want to get to 3 million. If you're at 3, you want to get to 10. If you're at 10, you want to get to 20. If you're at 20, maybe you're like looking to get to 30. Whatever it may be, you want to have some sort of revenue goal. Maybe there's some sort of a category goal. Maybe there's a 3-letter acronym developing for your category. At ToutApp, it was sales engagement, sales acceleration that was starting to develop, and we would talk about that all the time. So you really want to talk about in terms of what is the goal and how do you quantify it and what does winning look like? Because that will get everyone pre-framed and kind of tethered to, all right, here's what we're driving to. Now let's talk about what do we need to do, what strategic decisions we need to make. When it comes to actual strategic planning processes, there's a billion different people, billion different experts on how they want to do it. And I found personally, you end up in 2 ends of the spectrum. I've been at strategy offsites where someone was running it and literally came in with no plan. There was no plan, and the CEO was up front, and we're all looking around, and I'm like, what do we do? Like, how do we do this? And they literally did not have a plan on how they were gonna run the strategy offsite. That's one end of the spectrum where they're hoping and praying that us being in a room, magic will happen. really what ends up happening is someone else steps up and actually runs with it. The other end of the spectrum is you go into a strategy offsite, and this has happened to me also, where we end up over-engineering what we're gonna do. It's too rigid, it's too constricted, there's not enough room for free-flowing discussion, but there's not enough room to actually stay tethered to something, and you just get lost in the details and everyone's fighting over each other, nothing works. What you wanna do is the sweet spot, and to get to that sweet spot, I learned over time through running my own company, through helping with strategy offsites with other CEOs, through actually being SVP of strategy at Marketo and being able to run a couple of those offsites, which was an amazing experience for me personally. It was a lot of growth. Here's what I landed on. You essentially want to look at, and this may look familiar to you if you are a constant visitor to this channel. Once you've answered this bigger question, you really want to split the discussion between three parts. You want to look at market, you want to look at product, and you want to look at go-to-market. And you want to probably put success in here as well, because it's a SaaS business and you have to think about renewals. Now, this may look familiar because I keep saying this over and over and over, and I mean it clearly. Every SaaS business is built on these three pillars: market, product, go-to-market, in that order. If you have an amazing market, an okay product, and an okay go-to-market, you'll still win. If you have an amazing product, but a really crappy market and a really crappy go-to-market, nothing will matter. So there's a pecking order to this. And I'll go a little bit deeper into each of these, but that's the whole gist of it. I try to split up the actual parts of the strategy offsite into these three parts. Now, it's important to remember that if you're talking about here's where we want to get to next, here's what's possible, here are the big things that are happening, you're at, say, like a 5,000 foot zoom level. And what you don't want to do is now go from that 5,000 foot zoom level to like microns, right? You want to kind of zoom in and then zoom in and then zoom in and then zoom in. This is why I like market. What I want to talk about in market, especially when we're thinking about, well, what is our market opportunity? What is that? How are we doing in that market opportunity? Who's buying the most? There's really two key things that you really want to look at and you want to discuss with the leadership team. And you want to have data actually looking into this. The first one is you really want to look at what your ICP is, or really what part of your ICP is performing the best. Almost every company, as they start to rack up ARR, they start to understand that they perform a little bit better in a certain segment of the market. They perform a little bit better in terms of ACV, in terms of win rate, in terms of retention. And what you really want to find out is what your ideal customer profile is in terms of where you're performing the best. The second thing you want to look at are macro trends. Remember how I keep talking about if you have a great market and an okay product and an okay go-to-market, you'll still win? This is where you look at macro trends. If you're actually succeeding, you're actually getting growth, then what you want to ask is why? What are the big macro trends that are happening to your buyer, to your market, that's making it where they have to have your solution? A lot of times, there's certain parts of your ICP where that macro trend doesn't apply, and there's certain parts of your ICP where it does apply. And if you can focus more on that part of ICP and double down on that macro trend, and you can tie it to your strategic message, then you will win more. You guys starting to get this? So the biggest thing you want to do in terms of this market part of your strategy process is actually dig into your ICP, where you're winning and losing more, your macro trends, and what does that mean for your strategic narrative. I call it a manifesto. That's how you deploy your strategic narrative. You can call it whatever you want, but that's also an important part of this discussion. Once you've actually cornered in market and you start to understand where you're winning and where you're not winning and what's working and what's not, the next thing you want to zoom into is product. So again, market is the biggest zoom, where do we want to go as the biggest zoom level, then market, then product, right? And in terms of product, it can be really easy. Like if you talk to your sales guy, I've never had a sales leader that won't, like in every strategy also, like, listen, we cannot win anymore and we can't beat X company unless we have this one feature. And every single time we're telling, look, you got to sell what's on the back of the truck. You can't just rely on roadmap. This is a discussion I've had in every SaaS business I've ever been part of. This is just like a thing. This is a reality in SaaS. If you're getting that, go ahead and smash that like button because you understand. And it's also for the YouTube algorithm. So when you're digging into product, it's very easy to get into a feature debate. If we only had this feature, then we would be fine. The reality is customers don't just buy on features, they buy on results. And when it's very easy to over-index on a feature. It's very easy to say, if we don't have this feature, all bets are off, we will never win. The truth is, it's just not true. Customers will still buy, all right? And so what you want to really think about is what are the core loops and what are the core results? You really want to look at what is the customer actually getting by using the product? Now, we may not have all the features, but we have a certain loop in the product. And if we strengthen that loop, then will we actually sell more product? Will they get more success? Now, sometimes that may translate into more features, but a lot of times what ends up happening is, especially in the early stages to mid stages or a stalled SaaS company, they keep adding more and more and more and more and more, and they're neither here nor there. What they don't do is just strengthen one of their loops for their core ICP and just keep selling that over and over and over again, because that's how you get the growth. So in this section, try to pull away. And by the way, it's always good to have a moderator for your strategy offsites. That way you don't have to be the bad cop every single time. But if you don't get a moderator, then you can do it yourself, I guess, as the CEO. But it's really important to talk about core loops and core results so that you can really validate where your product is against the competition, how do those loops work, and how do you invest properly into your roadmap so those loops get actually strengthened instead of one-off features that you keep needing to do to win one deal here and another deal there, but it's never enough for your entire ICP. All right, are you guys getting this? And before I go to market, let me just pause here for a second. If you're starting to see how this simple framework can actually get you into that sweet spot of having a strategy offsite with your leadership team and to think about how do we get to the next stage of growth? How do we actually make strategic decisions? How do we allocate our resources? If you're starting to see the power in this, can I just get a yes in the comments below and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm if you haven't already. Also, if you're digging into this and you're still watching, chances are you're driving a SaaS business and you're looking to get to the next stage of growth. This is why I created my 5-point SaaS growth strategy guide. That's a mouthful, but it's super easy to get. I'll link to it below. But let's continue to go to market, right? Now, go to market is one of my favorite sessions. It's my favorite session because whenever I was at Marketo, when we got to go to market, like this is what we did, right? All day we were selling product to marketers and we were talking about our own marketing and our own sales. It was always exciting. And it was the same at ToutApp. That's what we did. We sold software all day long to salespeople. And so our own sales team and how they're doing and how we're going to market was always top of mind. This is all we did all day long, both at ToutApp and Marketo. So go to market was always my favorite, but that's not the reason I left it last. It can be very easy to just jump in on go-to-market, especially if you're a CEO that comes from a sales background. You say, yeah, we're good on product, we're good on market, let's just go sell more and hire more sellers and figure out budget for that. But if you jump right into that first, you can make a lot of local optimizations that really won't get you to this next stage. The reason for that is if you can put an army of salespeople on a product that's kind of mediocre in a market that doesn't have macro trends and on an ICP that's not focused, you're just gonna be burning a lot of cash on salespeople. I've made this mistake at ToutApp where we went from having 5 salespeople that were making tons of money and we were going 300% growth to hiring like 20 salespeople and they weren't closing properly and we were doing mid-market and SMB and enterprise all at once. We just kind of threw money at the problem and we almost died. It was only after that we almost died, and then it was only when we went back and ran a strategy offsite like this where we did the ICP exercise, looked at the macro trends, we focused on the core loops, and then we focus in on our go-to-market on a specific segment, cut the rest of the people. That's when we started to grow again. So there's real power in this if you follow it in these steps: market, product, and then go-to-market. The biggest thing you really want to dig into in this strategic offsite in terms of go-to-market is what is your one funnel? So often it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all the different marketing channels, all the different events that you're doing, all the different messages that you're putting out there. And the best SaaS companies align around one strategic message, around a very core ICP with one core loop and result under one funnel. That's how you drive the growth, because you like just get honed in on that level of growth, especially in the 0 to 100 million. That's just what it takes. And you just get honed in on that and you keep driving that and driving that and driving that and driving that and driving that. So having this one funnel is super important. And the way you understand this, you look at what channels you're getting the most attention in, what type of messaging you're actually winning in, and what the sales process is looking like. And you can start to talk about how do you actually optimize this. Now, I have a very specific framework on how to have this one funnel. I call it an unstoppable sales funnel. It works for any size company that are in the early stages of a SaaS business. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my SaaS go-to-market program. The SaaS go-to-market program is a coaching program that I run where I work with you, the CEO, to really not just get the strategy right like this, but also figure out your unstoppable sales funnel, which is the most important thing you can do to drive growth for your SaaS business. So if you're interested in a SaaS go-to-market program, I am accepting new founders into the program. Just follow the link below or just go to tkkader.com/GTM to learn more about the program. Also, if you want to run a strategy offsite like this and you're in the later stages, like you're past the 10 million ARR and you're worried about growth and you really want to run a proper strategy offsite, then I have a new strategy offsite program. Just go to tkkader.com/growth and you can learn more about that. The GTM program is really good for people that have some revenue and a product in the market and are really trying to get to a repeatable go-to-market machine. That's what the go-to-market program is for, and it's been growing like crazy. This new program, I've had some founders that have talked to me. They have much more mature SaaS businesses. They want to run this strategy offsite. This is why I thought to do this video. So that's why I created this new growth strategy program. You can learn more about that. All of these are linked below. And by the way, I also put together some deeper thoughts on how to create a one-page strategy for your SaaS business. I believe every SaaS business, every CEO, every founder should have a one-page strategy that's codified, forces you to really make some tough decisions and succinctly describe it. I believe that everyone should have that. So if you want to create something like that just to get started, then be sure to check out my 5-point startup strategy guide. In my 5-point startup strategy guide, I go much deeper into how to ask the right questions to get to the right answers and how to follow this framework into this one-page strategy. You can go to getunstoppable.com/strategy to get that guide, or you can just follow the link below. Lastly, I have a few videos that you may want to check out as well. I have a video on how to think about building your ICP. I'll link to that below. I have a video on product strategy. I'll link to that below. And I have a video on what an unstoppable sales funnel is. I'll link to that below. There's also a video on market segmentation, which helps you think a little bit more about ICP as well. I'll link to that below as well. So I've talked about a lot of these topics on the framework around these. So if you like all of that and you want to work with me, then you can join my program and we can work together to actually implement these things. So that's all I have for you today. That's how you run a strategy offsite. That's how you ask some important questions around your business to drive to the next stage of growth. If you got value from this, please hit that like button. Also, if you have a fellow CEO, a fellow SaaS founder that will get value from this video or this channel, please share it with them. If it's a WhatsApp group or a Slack channel or a mailing list, please share this video. It'll mean the world to me and my team. And lastly, remember, everyone needs a strategy for their life and their business. But when you are with us, yours is going to be unstoppable. I'm TK, and I'll see you in the next episode. You can go to getunstoppable.com/strategy for that guide. Oh, excuse me. Also, I want to make sure that this is still recording. Yeah, it's still recording. Cool. Once you've answered this, cut. Let's go.